Okay, so FaithWalk interviews, how did that come to be? Honestly, it was with discussions with some people, and I know some younger people that were talking about how they didn't think anybody else went through things that they were going through, or things like that. I mentioned, ask somebody, talk to somebody from your church or whatever in those conversations, and it was apparent that they weren't comfortable doing that, and that's okay. Like I get that completely. I wouldn't have been at that age either. So it really kind of came from that, where there are a lot of people with questions, but they're afraid to ask others. It's a pretty intimidating thing for sure. So it was one of those, like, how do we fill that? What can we do to help with that side of it? And honestly, it was I said, well, we could do an interview. Of course, none of this stuff I know about or I'm comfortable with. I mean, I've been in front of the camera like twice in my life before doing this, and wasn't a huge fan either way, but I've been interviewed twice for different things. So we could probably do that. I'm sure we could probably figure that out. So then said, okay, well, if I'm going to do this, then I need to be in front of the camera and kind of figure out lighting and all that kind of stuff. And I've mentioned this in one of the intros to the intro to my faith-based interview. That really, there was no plan there. It was, I just want to know how to set this up in case, I interview somebody. And then as we went through it, my kids interviewed me. They had questions, and I let them ask. Now, there were probably some questions that they didn't ask because, again, it's the parent, and that's totally okay. But right after I did that one, there was something that just told me to go interview Helen. And her FaithWalk interview is out there. And then the whole FaithWalk thing is kind of like, yeah, I mean, so many people have this, seem to have, like the people that I talk to seem to have this idea in their head that the people that go to church are just, they've always just done that. And there was no questioning. And, young people, I kind of get that. That's like the vision. And then, but it didn't matter. It didn't matter. Whoever I talked to had that. So it was like, okay, yeah, that's not my story at all, for sure. And I don't know if it's anybody else's, but man, we should probably ask. We should probably ask some people. So went over and interviewed Helen. I just said to you, have you ever been interviewed before? And she says, yeah, once in the 60s. So Helen's a woman that has been studying the Word of God for 68 years. And very few people have really picked her brain. So I got to sit down with her and talk to her about it and really kind of just get her story. There was no directing. She didn't know the questions ahead of time, none of that stuff. And that's the thing that I want to point out is these interviews are not really, hey, question and answer type scenarios. It's really just kind of letting it flow. And I'll give you an example of that. So with Helen's, there were some questions. I used some of the same questions that the kids did, but I, kind of let it flow. And then I asked some of those questions of her because I was curious. I wanted to know what her answers were to the same questions that I was asked. So the next week, I was like, oh, okay, I have that interview. I have the other one done. So again, I'm thinking, well, there's something out there with this, we'll see how it goes. But, I was at a camp for something that I wasn't even going to go to. And I just happened to go there, and on the way out, I saw someone that I wanted to touch base with. I just said, I want to go tell her that, I've been talking to her son about things, and just really cool to be talking with him. And that was all I was going to say. So I go up to her, and she starts talking about, I've been wanting to talk to you. I just want to, I want a way to get my story out to my family. Something that just like chronicles my faith walk. Now, she had no idea that I've been working on this, that I had done any of this. Didn't know the site existed, didn't know about the channel that had been started. No idea. And I went, okay. So I said, hey, I'm doing this thing. Would you be interested? Uh-huh. So I was like, all right. So that Wednesday, went over to do it. I just want to be real with you guys. on the way there, I had a list of questions because I had them from when my kids asked me. When I was talking to Helen, I had these. I forgot it. I got everything in. I went, I'm on the way there. And it's not a long distance away from me, her place. But I'm on the way there, and I went, yeah, there's probably a reason that I forgot that. And I said a prayer. I didn't do that with the first one. I was more structured. The second one, I just said a quick prayer on the way there. I get there, and it just flows. Now, the interesting thing about it is, she said the same thing. She's like, I wrote stuff down. I had a list, but I just decided to pray about it. So I literally, the second one, I let the cameras roll, and she just kind of told. There were a couple of things that I asked, but I asked because I was curious. Hey, can you go into more detail here, or can you do that? And it's, but it wasn't me. And as she says, and I believe she says, it wasn't her. It was God flowing through her and speaking to her, and she was just telling her story. And if I would have just asked the questions that I had before, that interview is completely different. I mean, it really is. And it was a really cool thing. So when I say I'm going with the flow and I'm just listening to God and listening to people, I mean it. I don't know. And if I don't know who I'm going to interview, because I was starting to I'll plan this. Yeah, this is God's plan, not mine. So when you see these FaithWalk interviews, somehow, some way, they came to be. It's not like somebody's going, hey, I really want to, like Scott, I want to put myself in front of the camera and I need to tell people that that's not what's going on. It's really, if God's not nudging me or bringing something to me and, conversate, there's no agenda. And somebody that has an agenda that's like, hey, I want to get they're not going to be on here because that's not God driven, in my opinion. Just like I'm not in front of the camera because I want to be here, I want to have a message out there, my ego is the size of this room. Some people might think it is, but that's not it at all. Like I'd much rather be not doing this. Okay? So when you see people doing these interviews, the other thing I want to say, they're doing it to help others. They're doing it because they're listening to God and being nudged in a way to do that. And Satan's coming. Okay? So when you step out, when you do that kind of stuff, he's always going to be messing with you. I have a shirt that says that. Anyway, but don't be part of his plan. What I'm going to ask you to do is lift up the people that have done this in prayer for protection from him, and don't be part of his plan. See it for what it is. If it doesn't speak to you, cool, no problem. But don't go after anybody. We don't judge people. That's up to God. So these interviews are long. It is what it is. I try to break up the chapters so you can look at it. You don't have to watch it all in one sitting. Watch a chapter. Go back and watch another one. Scrub the timeline. Scrub means, just drag your mouse over the timeline and you can see the different topics. Go, I want to learn more about that. Go and check them out. See if they speak to you. If they don't, that's cool too. If that's not something that interests you, we have other resources. The first couple, I did an intro and a little bit just to let people know what it was about. So I want to do that here. So when you go look at them, you know why they're there. Thanks.